Black CEO goes undercover as a receptionist. What he learns about his staff leaves him speechless. Malik Johnson stared at the crayon drawing pinned to his office wall, a child's depiction of a happy family. His daughter Sarah's artwork from before his wife's tragic accident 3 years ago. The city skyline outside his corner office at TechVision's headquarters usually filled him with pride, but today it felt hollow. The employee satisfaction report on his desk showed a devastating 15% drop. His phone buzzed Sarah's special needs school calling again. As he reached for it, a shadow caught his eye, a dark figure disappearing around the corner of the building. Something was terribly wrong at TechVision, and the weight of running a billion-dollar company while being a single father to an autistic daughter had never felt heavier. The anonymous note on his desk whispered of betrayal from within, and as rain began to fall on the windowpane, Malik knew his world was about to change forever. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you find this content interesting, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to support the channel and never miss our upcoming exciting stories. Thank you all so much. Malik Johnson's journey to becoming CEO of TechVision hadn't been easy. Growing up in South Chicago, he'd watched his father, a devoted pastor, serve the community while working 3 jobs to put him through college. Those early morning prayers and late-night study sessions had carved his path to Harvard Business School, where he'd met Rachel, the woman who would become his wife and greatest supporter. And together, they'd built TechVision from a small consulting firm into a billion-dollar technology company. Rachel had been there for every milestone, every setback, every triumph. But 3 years ago, a rainy night and a drunk driver had shattered their perfect world, leaving Malik alone to raise their daughter Sarah, diagnosed with autism at age 5. Sarah, now 8, lived in a world of her own making. Her blue eyes, so like her mother's, would light up at the sight of butterflies or the sound of church bells, but she struggled with the simplest social interactions. The special needs school helped, but Malik couldn't shake the guilt of spending more time in board meetings than with his daughter. Pastor Michael, his father, had moved to Virginia to help, becoming both grandfather and spiritual guide to their broken family. TechVision's Virginia office housed 3 souls whose paths would soon intertwine with Malik's in ways he could never imagine. Angela Martinez, senior accountant, was more than just numbers on a spreadsheet. A single mother to 7-year-old Sophia, she carried a burden few knew about. Every evening after the office emptied, she would sit at her desk, calculating not just company finances, but how to afford her daughter's heart surgery on a middle manager's salary. The golden photo frame on her desk showed Sophia's bright smile, hiding the blue tinge to her lips that kept Angela awake at night. Henry Chan, the 8th specialist whom everyone loved, moved through the office like a quiet guardian angel. His gentle smile and patient demeanor masked his own battle stage 2 lymphoma diagnosed just months ago, and a younger brother lost to drug addiction. During lunch breaks, he would sit in the server room, reviewing medical bills while teaching himself new coding languages, determined to advance his career to better support his family. The Christmas cards on his desk were all from grateful colleagues whose technical problems he'd solved, none knowing he spent his weekends at chemotherapy sessions. Then there was Linda Morrison, operations director and the source of growing complaints about toxic workplace culture. Her polished exterior and sharp business acumen hid a deep wound, the loss of her only son in a car accident 5 years ago. The driver, a young black entrepreneur, had walked away with minor injuries while her Thomas had not survived. Since then, her grief had twisted into something darker, particularly towards Malik, whose success and family reminded her of everything she'd lost. The office dynamics reflected these hidden struggles. Angela worked tirelessly, her request for promotion repeatedly overlooked despite her exceptional performance. Henry's technical brilliance was taken for granted, his salary stagnant despite saving the company millions through its innovations. Linda's department saw the highest turnover rate, with particularly poor retention among minority employees. Pastor Michael watched these dynamics unfold during his weekly visits to bring Sarah to see her father. His weathered face and gentle wisdom had earned him unofficial chaplain status among some employees. He'd counsel them in the break room, offering prayers and perspective gained from 40 years of ministry in Chicago's toughest neighborhoods. "Everyone's fighting a battle you know nothing about," he would often tell Malik during their Sunday conversations. The Virginia office itself stood as a testament to Tech Vision's success, 30 floors of glass and steel overlooking the Potomac. Inside, beneath the sleek modern design and motivational posters about innovation and teamwork, currents of discontent swirled. The break room buzzed with whispered conversations about favoritism and discrimination. The employee satisfaction survey results were just the latest symptom of a deeper malady. Beyond the corporate politics, a more personal drama was unfolding. Sarah's drawings, which Malik kept in a portfolio on his desk, showed a progression that broke his heart, from colorful family portraits including her mother to increasingly dark and isolated figures. Her latest artwork, a black butterfly alone in a corner, seemed to reflect not just her own isolation but the growing shadows within Tech Vision itself. Late at night, when the office was empty save for the cleaning staff and the occasional overworked employee, the building held its secrets close. Angela's hidden tears, Henry's quiet prayers, Linda's bitter plans, and the echoes of countless untold stories lingered in the recycled air. And somewhere, in the digital maze of corporate servers and encrypted emails, evidence of a plot against Tech Vision waited to be discovered. As the quarter's end approached and pressure mounted to reverse the company's declining metrics, these disparate threads would begin to weave together. The story of Tech Vision's crisis was more than just numbers on a report. It was a tapestry of human struggle, hidden pain, and the possibility of redemption. For Malik Johnson, the path forward would require more than business acumen. It would demand a journey into the heart of his company and his own soul. The stage was set for a transformation that would shake Tech Vision to its foundations, testing faith, forgiveness, and the true meaning of leadership. In his office, Malik picked up Sarah's butterfly drawing, unaware that his decision to go undercover would soon unleash a chain of events that would change not just his company, but the lives of everyone within it. The emergency board meeting on that rainy Thursday morning felt more like a funeral than a corporate gathering. Malik sat at the head of the mahogany table, his fingers pressed against his temples as the projector displayed increasingly alarming statistics. The 15% drop in employee satisfaction was just the tip of the iceberg. Productivity had plummeted, resignations were mounting, and whispers of discrimination lawsuits echoed through the corridors. "We can't ignore this anymore," Barbara Chin, the HR director, stated firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "The anonymous complaints are getting worse. We've received reports of systematic harassment, particularly in the Virginia office." As if on cue, Malik's phone buzzed with a text message. "Another anonymous threat. Your perfect world is about to crumble. Every empire falls from within." He silently slipped the phone back into his pocket, his mind racing to the similar messages he'd been receiving for weeks. The board members continued their heated discussion, but Malik's attention drifted to the security footage playing silently on his laptop. The Virginia office cameras showed the usual bustle of activity, but something felt off. He watched Linda Morrison berate a young black employee, her body language aggressive despite the silence of the recording. In another frame, Angela Martinez wiped tears from her eyes in the break room, quickly composing herself before returning to her desk. "We need outside consultants," someone suggested. "A full audit of our corporate culture." "No," Malik said suddenly, his voice quiet but firm. The room fell silent. "We need something more direct, more personal." He closed his laptop and stood, walking to the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the city gleaming in the morning sun. "I'm going undercover." The board erupted in protests. "It's too risky. The media would have a field day if they found out you can't abandon your CEO duties." But Malik's mind was made up. He thought of Sarah, of how she would sit at her window for hours, observing the world from a safe distance. Perhaps it was time for him to do the same to truly see his company through different eyes. The transformation took 3 days. A skilled makeup artist altered his appearance subtly but effectively enough to avoid immediate recognition, but not so much as to seem suspicious. His designer suits were replaced with off-the-rack clothing. His confident CEO stride was modified to something more hesitant, more ordinary. Remember Pastor Michael warned during their final meeting before the operation began, sometimes the hardest truths come from the lowest places. Are you ready to hear them? Malik nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at his gut. He thought of Rachel, of how she would have handled this crisis. She had always been better at reading people, at understanding the human element of business. His first morning as Marcus Lewis temporary receptionist began with a brutal awakening. The employee entrance was crowded and no one held the door for him. The security guard barely glanced at his temporary ID, and the break room coffee was nothing like the premium brew in his executive suite. But it was the conversations that truly opened his eyes. Standing by the copy machine, he overheard 2 managers discussing budget cuts just trimmed from the lower levels they're used to struggling anyway. In the bathroom, he heard a young employee on the phone crying about being passed over for promotion despite having the highest performance metrics in her department. As he fumbled with the switchboard, attempting to manage the constant flow of calls, Malik realized that this view from the bottom would show him more than any consultant's report ever could. He was invisible now, just another face in the crowd, and the truth was already beginning to reveal itself. Little did he know his decision to go undercover would unravel not just the company's problems, but a web of personal tragedies and hidden connections that would change everything he thought he knew about tech vision and himself. The turning point came on Malik's 4th day undercover. Through the reception desk security monitors, he watched Linda Morrison's Mercedes pull into her reserved parking space 15 minutes later than usual. Her typically immaculate appearance seemed slightly disheveled, and her hands shook as she checked her phone. The morning's first crisis erupted almost immediately. A young black analyst had submitted a report highlighting concerning patterns in client demographics. Linda stormed into the open office area, her voice sharp enough to cut through the usual morning bustle. "This is completely unacceptable," she snapped, throwing the report onto the analyst's desk. "Are you trying to suggest we're discriminating against certain clients? Do you have any idea how this makes us look?" Her voice dripped with contempt, loud enough for everyone to hear. "People like you always want to play the race card instead of accepting that maybe you're just not good enough." The analyst sat frozen, her face a mask of humiliation. Other employees kept their heads down, their discomfort palpable. Malik felt his fingers tighten around his pen, fighting the urge to intervene. Later that afternoon, while sorting mail, he discovered Angela's desk empty. Following a hunch, he found her in the small prayer room, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. A crumpled medical bill lay beside her $175,000 for her daughter Sophia's heart surgery. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, not knowing her CEO was the one offering a tissue. "I've been here 6 years, given everything to this company. 3 promotions passed over, always with some excuse. Now Sophia," her voice broke, "the insurance won't cover it all. I'm selling my car, but it's not enough." The day's revelations weren't finished. Henry, the beloved specialist, had a coughing fit while fixing the reception area's computer. As he reached for water, his sleeve pulled back, revealing the medical alert bracelet and telltale bruising of chemotherapy treatments. "Just anemia," Henry said quickly, catching Malik's concerned look. Nothing to worry about, but later Malik overheard him in an intense phone conversation about clinical trial costs and insurance claim denials. The most shocking moment came near day's end. Linda had stayed late, unusual for her. As the office emptied, Malik observed her through the security feed, accessing the server room with a key card that wasn't hers. She emerged 20 minutes later, her expression a mix of triumph and something else was it grief. In the quiet of the empty office, Malik used his own access to check the server logs. What he found sent a chill down his spine. Someone had been systematically accessing and altering employee records, performance reviews, and promotion recommendations. The pattern was clear: minority employees and those from disadvantaged backgrounds were being subtly undermined. But there was more. Hidden in Linda's personal drive, he found a folder labeled Thomas. Inside were photos of a young man with Linda's eyes and smile, newspaper clippings about a fatal car accident, and Malik's heart stopped detailed research about Rachel's death. The same drunk driver who had killed Linda's son had taken Rachel's life 6 months later. The pieces began falling into place: Linda's hatred, the company's cultural crisis, the systematic discrimination. But something still felt off. The technical sophistication of the server room access suggested someone else was involved, someone with deep knowledge of tech vision systems. As Malik locked up the reception desk, his phone buzzed with a text from Pastor Michael. "Remember, son, sometimes God's greatest tests come disguised as our deepest wounds." Looking back at the darkened office, Malik realized he'd uncovered more than just corporate dysfunction. He'd stumbled upon a web of pain, revenge, and hidden connections that would force him to confront not only the company's future but his own past. The real question was, could healing come from the very place where the wounds began? Over the next 2 weeks, Malik's immersion into the lower ranks of tech vision revealed layers of complexity he'd never imagined from his corner office. Each day brought new insights, deepening relationships, and increasingly troubling discoveries about the company he thought he knew. Angela's situation became more dire as Sophia's condition deteriorated. One morning, Malik found her asleep at her desk, spreadsheets scattered around her. Working through the night had become her norm, taking on freelance accounting jobs after hours. Her desktop photo of Sophia at the beach was recent, but the little girl's lips were visibly blue, her smile brave despite obvious fatigue. "The doctors say we can't wait much longer," she confided during a coffee break, unaware she was speaking to her CEO. "But the hospital wants proof of payment before scheduling the surgery." She laughed bitterly, showing Malik a spreadsheet of her assets. Her house was mortgaged to the limit, her retirement account drained, and she'd even listed her mother's wedding ring on an online auction site. Henry's story unfolded in equally heartbreaking ways. Despite his worsening condition, he maintained his role as the office's guardian angel. Malik watched him stay late to help new employees learn the systems, even on days when his hands shook from chemotherapy aftereffects. One evening, Malik discovered Henry's secret project. He was developing a simplified training program for older employees at risk of losing their jobs to automation. "My father lost his job at 60 because he couldn't keep up with technology," Henry explained, his voice rough from coughing. "No one took the time to teach him. I won't let that happen here." He didn't mention that his own medical leave request had been denied twice, or that his insurance claims were being mysteriously delayed. The discrimination patterns became increasingly apparent. Malik observed meetings where minority employees' ideas were dismissed, only to be praised when repeated by others. He witnessed qualified candidates being passed over for promotions with vague explanations about cultural fit. The data he'd gathered confirmed his worst fears: systematic bias had become embedded in Tech Vision's culture. Linda's behavior grew more erratic. She began arriving earlier, leaving later, and spending unusual amounts of time in restricted areas. Through careful observation, Malik pieced together her daily routine, noting her frequent calls from a blocked number and mysterious meetings in the parking garage. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a fire drill, Malik helped evacuate the building and found himself next to Linda's assistant, Jenny. In the chaos, Jenny's phone fell, its screen lighting up with a message that made Malik's blood run cold. "Operation Phoenix proceeds as planned. T's death will be avenged." That evening, after most employees had left, Malik witnessed a scene that crystallized the human cost of TechVision's toxic culture. Angela received a call that sent her running from her desk in tears. Sophia had fainted at school and been rushed to the hospital. But when she tried to leave, Linda blocked her path. "The quarterly reports are due tomorrow," Linda insisted coldly. "Personal issues don't excuse professional responsibilities." Henry, despite his own weakness, stepped in. "I'll help finish the reports," he offered, earning a scathing look from Linda. "Stay out of this," she snapped. "Your performance review is coming up, and your attendance record is already questionable." The confrontation drew others. A small crowd gathered, their faces reflecting years of suppressed frustration. Someone mentioned calling HR, only to be met with bitter laughter. HR, a veteran employee, scoffed. "They're part of the problem. Remember what happened to Marcus when he filed that discrimination complaint." The moment crystallized everything wrong with TechVision's culture. Fear, intimidation, and systematic suppression of human dignity had replaced the values of innovation and inclusion that Rachel had helped establish. That night, Malik stayed late, ostensibly cleaning the reception area but actually following Linda. His patience was rewarded when she entered the server room, unaware of being observed. Through the security feed, he watched her insert a flash drive into the main terminal. Whatever Operation Phoenix was, it clearly involved TechVision's secure data. But the most revealing moment came as Linda prepared to leave. She stopped at her son's photo on her desk, touching it gently. "Almost done, Thomas," she whispered. "Soon everyone will know what it feels like to lose everything they love." The pieces were falling into place, but the puzzle was darker than Malik had imagined. This wasn't just about discrimination or toxic leadership. It was about grief, revenge, and a tragedy that connected Linda to his own loss in ways he was only beginning to understand. Pastor Michael's words from their last Sunday conversation echoed in his mind, "Hurt people, hurt people, hurt people, son." But healing can only begin when we see the humanity in those who wound us. As Malik drove home that night, his mind raced with everything he'd learned. Angela's desperate struggle to save her daughter, Henry's silent battle with cancer while fighting for others, and Linda's grief-fueled vendetta were symptoms of a deeper malady. TechVision had lost its soul, and finding it would require more than policy changes or diversity initiatives. Sarah was already asleep when he arrived home, her favorite butterfly nightlight casting shadows on the wall. Looking at his daughter, Malik realized that saving TechVision wasn't just about protecting his company, it was about creating the kind of world he wanted Sarah to inherit. A world where compassion wasn't seen as weakness, where dignity wasn't determined by position, and where healing was possible even in the face of devastating loss. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, Malik had clarity about one thing: TechVision's transformation would have to begin with the human heart. The question was, could he find a way to heal the wounds of the past before they destroyed everything he and Rachel had built? The first climax erupted on a stormy Monday morning. Malik had barely settled at the reception desk when the company's emergency alarm system blared. Red warning messages flashed across every computer screen: "Security breach, all systems compromised." Panic spread through the office like wildfire. Employees rushed to secure their computers, but it was too late. On every screen, personal employee files began displaying salaries, performance reviews, private emails, all exposed for everyone to see. But these weren't just random files, they were specifically selected to reveal years of systematic discrimination and corruption. Angela's promotion denials despite her stellar performance records. Henry's rejected medical leave requests. Dozens of minority employees altered performance reviews. The data painted a damning picture of TechVision's toxic culture. In the midst of chaos, Sophia's school called. Angela's daughter had collapsed again, this time more seriously. As Angela rushed to gather her things, she discovered her computer displaying her desperate emails to HR about medical coverage, her pleas for help broadcast for all to see. "How dare they?" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "My daughter's medical condition. My private struggles." Who would do this? Her legs gave way and she collapsed into a nearby chair, the weight of public humiliation adding to her already crushing burden. Henry rushed to help her, but the exertion triggered a severe coughing fit. Blood speckled his white shirt as he doubled over, finally unable to hide his condition any longer. "Someone call an ambulance." Voices shouted as he slumped against the wall, his secret battle with cancer now exposed to everyone. Linda appeared in the doorway of her office, her face ashen. Her private folder was open, on every screen photos of Thomas, the accident reports, and her systematic campaign of discrimination laid bare. But there was something else: encrypted emails to an unknown partner, discussing Operation Phoenix and plans for Tech Vision's destruction. "You don't understand." Linda's voice cracked as employees backed away from her. "He took everything from me. My son, my future, my hope. Your precious CEO Malik Johnson walks around with his perfect life, his daughter, his success, while my Thomas lies cold in the ground." The office fell silent except for the continuing alarm. Through the reception desk's security feeds, Malik watched ambulances arrive for both Henry and Angela. He saw Linda being confronted by security, her face twisted with a mixture of grief and defiance. But something about the timing felt wrong. This breach was too perfect, too precisely targeted. His phone buzzed with an urgent message from his executive assistant. Tech Vision stock was plummeting. Major clients were calling to terminate contracts. The board was demanding an emergency meeting. In mere hours, the company he and Rachel had built was facing potential bankruptcy. As rain lashed against the windows and thunder rolled overhead, Malik realized this was more than just a data breach or a disgruntled employee's revenge. Someone had orchestrated this perfectly, using Linda's grief and the company's real problems to execute a devastating attack. Pastor Michael appeared in the lobby, soaked from the storm. "Sarah School called," he said quietly. "She's having another meltdown. They can't reach you on your office line." Their eyes met, and understanding passed between them. Malik was being forced to choose between his company and his daughter at the worst possible moment. The security feed showed Linda being escorted to the parking garage, but her words echoed in Malik's mind. "Your precious CEO Malik Johnson." Something about her tone, the specific phrasing, suggested she was reading from someone else's script. As chaos continued to unfold around him, Malik realized this was just the beginning. Whoever was behind this attack knew exactly where to strike, not just at Tech Vision Systems, but at the very heart of its people. And somehow they knew secrets that only someone at the highest levels of the company could possibly know. The next 48 hours brought wave after wave of devastation. Tech Vision stock had plunged 60%. Wiping out billions in value. Major clients fled, fearing association with the scandal. The board called for Malik's resignation, claiming his leadership had allowed this toxic culture to flourish. But the real tragedies were playing out in the lives of those Malik had come to care about during his undercover mission. Angela sat vigil at Virginia Memorial Hospital, where Sophia's condition had deteriorated rapidly. The stress of her mother's public humiliation had triggered a severe cardiac episode. The doctors were clear without immediate surgery, Sophia might not survive the week. "We need full payment up front," the hospital administrator explained coldly, unmoved by Angela's tears. "Given the current situation with Tech Vision's insurance provider, we cannot proceed based on coverage promises." Angela's life savings, even with her sold car and jewelry, covered barely a third of the cost. Henry's situation was equally dire. The data breach had exposed not just his illness, but his desperate attempts to stay working despite his doctor's orders. The exposure to stress in his weakened immune system had caused a critical decline. From his hospital bed, he still tried to help, using his phone to assist colleagues with technical issues. "Don't worry about me," he wheezed during a brief phone call. "Just make sure those older employees get their training. They can't lose their jobs now." His voice trailed off into another coughing fit. The deepest cut came from Sarah. The disruption to her routine, combined with sensing her father's distress, had triggered the worst meltdown of her life. "Pastor Michael called from the special needs school. She's not responding to anyone, Malik. She keeps drawing black butterflies and crying for Rachel." Linda had been taken into custody, but her words haunted the empty corridors of Tech Vision. "You'll all understand loss now." Yet even in handcuffs, she'd laugh strangely, as if she knew something everyone else didn't. The company's attempts at damage control seemed futile. Each press release was met with more damaging leaks. Every effort to reassure clients led to more contract cancellations. The carefully built reputation of decades crumbled in hours. In his real office, not the reception desk, Malik stared at the family photo on his wall. Rachel's smile seemed to mock him now. "Take care of our people," she'd always said. "Numbers are important, but people matter more." He'd failed her, failed their vision, failed their daughter. Pastor Michael brought Sarah to the office hoping familiar surroundings might calm her. Instead, she became more agitated, screaming at the sight of her father's corporate portrait. "Not real," she kept crying. "Daddy's not real anymore." The final blow came at midnight. The board's email was brief: either Malik resigned immediately, or they would convene an emergency session to remove him. Their compromise offer would protect his ownership shares, but required him to publicly take responsibility for the company's toxic culture. Standing at his office window, Malik watched ambulances below, their red lights reflecting off the rain-slicked streets. Somewhere in this city, Angela held her dying daughter's hand. Henry fought for breath in a hospital room. Sarah retreated further into her private world of butterflies and loss. And Linda sat in a cell, perhaps the only one who knew the full truth. The company he'd sacrificed everything to build was collapsing. The people he'd wanted to protect were suffering. Even his connection with his own daughter was fraying. In trying to save everything, he was losing it all. Pastor Michael's words from earlier that day echoed in his mind sometimes. "Son, God strips everything away so we can see what truly matters. The question is, are you ready to lose it all to find the truth?" The rain intensified, drumming against the windows like accusatory fingers. In the dark reflection, Malik saw not the successful CEO, but a broken man facing the cost of his own blindness. And somewhere in the night, the real architect of Tech Vision's destruction watched and waited, knowing the worst was yet to come. The first major twist revealed itself through an unlikely source. As Malik cleared his office preparing for the inevitable board meeting, a young janitor knocked on his door. "Mr. Johnson," the man said nervously, "there's something you need to see in Mrs. Morrison's office." The janitor, Miguel, had been working late the night before Linda's arrest. He'd witnessed her in what appeared to be a heated argument with someone, not on the phone, but in person. "It was your former CFO, sir, Mr. Richards. He was saying something about Phase 2 and how you'd finally understand the price of betrayal." James Richards. The name hit Malik like a physical blow. Rachel's closest friend and Tech Vision's CFO until his quiet resignation 3 years ago, just months after Rachel's death. The pieces suddenly clicked into horrible place. Racing to Linda's office, Malik discovered what Miguel had found: a hidden compartment behind the filing cabinet containing a laptop and stacks of documents. Among them was a USB drive labeled insurance. The files revealed a truth more twisted than he could have imagined. The accident that killed Rachel hadn't been random. The drunk driver who also killed Linda's son had been paid by James Richards. But why? The answer lay in emails between Richards and Linda, dating back 3 years. Rachel had discovered major financial irregularities, a massive embezzlement scheme orchestrated by Richards. She'd been planning to expose him. Linda's voice recording on the laptop was filled with anguish. "He came to me after Thomas died. Said he could help me destroy the man who built the company where my son's killer worked. I didn't know. God help me, I didn't know he'd arranged both accidents. Used my grief, my rage. I was just a pawn. Pastor Michael arrived as Malik was processing this revelation. Sarah's drawings, the older man said quietly. Show them to me again. The black butterflies Sarah had been obsessively drawing weren't just expressions of trauma, they matched the corporate logo of a shell company found in Richard's documents. Rachel used to say Sarah saw things others missed, Pastor Michael mused. Maybe she's been trying to tell us something all along. A call from the hospital brought another shocking connection. Henry's doctor had finally discovered why his insurance claims were being denied. Someone had been systematically altering his medical records in the company system. The same pattern appeared in Angela's insurance denials for Sophia. Linda, now cooperative after learning how she'd been manipulated, revealed more of Richard's plan. Phase 2 isn't just about destroying Tech Vision, she explained from her holding cell. He's been buying up company shares through offshore accounts during the crisis. Once the stock hits bottom, he'll take control, Malik finished, using the very money he stole from us. But the most devastating revelation came from an unexpected source. Sarah, brought to the office by Pastor Michael, walked straight to the wall of corporate photos. She stopped at one showing Rachel and Richards at a company event just weeks before her death. Bad man, she said, clearly the most direct communication she'd shown in weeks. Mommy knew. Security footage from Rachel's last day, long archived but never reviewed, showed her leaving Richard's office, clutching what looked like the same USB drive they'd just found. She'd hidden the evidence, knowing someone might need it one day. The weight of truth was overwhelming. Rachel's death, Linda's tragedy, the company's near destruction, all orchestrated by a man who'd been like family. A man who'd sat with Malik at Rachel's funeral, who'd helped plan Thomas's memorial service with Linda. Pastor Michael placed a hand on Malik's shoulder. Now you know the truth, he said softly. The question is, what will you do with it? The answer came from an unexpected quarter. On her hospital bed, Angela had been reviewing company financial records on her laptop. Old habits die hard for dedicated accountants. She'd found something crucial, a pattern in the trading algorithm that could prove Richard's manipulation. Henry, between treatments, had managed to trace the source of the cyber attacks. It's not just about revenge, he whispered hoarsely. Richards is planning something bigger, tomorrow. Time was running out. The board meeting was in 12 hours. Richard's Phase 2 was set to begin. And somewhere in the city, the man who'd orchestrated it all was preparing his final move, unaware that his carefully constructed plan had finally begun to unravel. The emergency board meeting transformed into a battleground as Malik strode into the conference room, no longer disguised as a receptionist, but carrying the weight of every truth he'd uncovered. James Richards sat among the board members, his surprise at Malik's confident entrance barely concealed behind a practiced smile. Before you vote on my resignation, Malik announced, there are some things you need to see. He nodded to Pastor Michael, who wheeled in Linda Morrison, accompanied by 2 FBI agents. The board members murmured in confusion. 3 years ago, Malik began, my wife Rachel discovered something that cost her her life. Today we finish what she started. He plugged the USB drive into the projector, and the room fell silent as years of manipulated records, offshore accounts, and damning emails filled the screen. Richards moved to stand, but one of the FBI agents stepped forward. Please remain seated, Mr. Richards. We have some questions about certain financial transactions. The evidence was devastating. Rachel's final audit trail, combined with Linda's testimony and the recently uncovered documents, painted a picture of systematic corruption that left the board members ashen-faced. But it was Angela's financial analysis, projected from her hospital bed via video link, that delivered the killing blow. The algorithm doesn't lie, her voice came through clearly, though her face showed exhaustion. Mr. Richards has been orchestrating Tech Vision's stock collapse while simultaneously acquiring shares through shell companies. the same shell companies that paid the driver who killed both Mrs. Johnson and Thomas Morrison. Richards lunged for the door but was quickly restrained. "You don't understand," he snarled. "This company was mine. I built it while Malik played family man with Rachel. Everything I did, I deserved." Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. She had slipped into the room quietly with Pastor Michael and now stood staring at Richards. "You hurt Mommy," she said clearly, her usually distant eyes focused and angry. "She knew you were bad." The board watched in stunned silence as Richards' composure cracked completely. "That stupid woman couldn't leave well enough alone," he shouted. "Always with her ethics, her integrity. The company was worth more than her principles." Malik felt a cold calm settle over him. "No, James, that's where you were wrong. The company was her principles." From his hospital bed, Henry had managed to reverse the damage to Tech Vision systems, restoring the corrupted files and exposing Richards' digital fingerprints. The stock manipulation evidence was already being sent to the SEC. Linda stepped forward, her handcuffs catching the light. "I was blinded by grief," she addressed the board. "Mr. Richards used my pain to help destroy what Mrs. Johnson died protecting. I accept my punishment, but you need to know the full truth." The board's vote was unanimous. Richards was removed immediately pending criminal charges. Malik would remain as CEO with a mandate to rebuild the company according to Rachel's original vision. But victory came with a price. As Richards was led away in handcuffs, he turned to Malik with a chilling smile. "You've won nothing," he hissed. "Your precious Angela's daughter? Her surgery was scheduled at my brother's hospital. One phone call and they'll move her to the bottom of the list. How long do you think she has?" Police had to restrain Malik as rage nearly overcame him. Pastor Michael's firm grip on his shoulder brought him back. "He's trying to make you choose, son," the older man whispered. "Between justice and mercy, between vengeance and salvation." The monitors showing Tech Vision's stock price were still flashing red. The company's reputation was in tatters. Sophia's life hung by a thread, and Henry's cancer treatment had been interrupted by the chaos. The victory felt hollow in the face of so much potential loss. As the boardroom slowly emptied, Malik stood at the window, Rachel's final message to him echoing in his mind, "Always choose love, my love, even when it's the hardest choice to make." The real test of leadership was about to begin. The second twist arrived like a thunderbolt at midnight. As Malik sat in the hospital chapel, praying for Sophia's survival, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. Pastor Michael had been reviewing Rachel's old files and found something extraordinary: a hidden insurance policy. Rachel, anticipating the worst, had set up a private medical foundation in Sarah's name, funded with her personal inheritance. The foundation's mission to provide emergency medical care for Tech Vision employees' families. It had remained dormant for 3 years, accumulating interest and growing to over $20 million. She knew, Pastor Michael said softly, showing Malik the documentation. Somehow she knew the company might face a crisis like this. The foundation's first designated beneficiary is listed as any child facing life-threatening illness whose parent serves Tech Vision with honor. Before Malik could process this revelation, Henry's doctor burst into the chapel. The latest test results had revealed something unprecedented. Henry's cancer had responded remarkably to an experimental treatment he'd received during the chaos. His prognosis had shifted from terminal to hopeful. But the most shocking development came from Linda. From her holding cell, she'd made a single phone call to her brother, a renowned cardiac surgeon who'd once saved Thomas's life during a childhood illness. "I can't bring Thomas back," she told Malik, tears streaming down her face, "but I can help save Sophia. My brother is flying in tonight, no charge." Richard's final attempt at revenge had backfired spectacularly. His threats against Sophia had prompted the hospital board to investigate his brother's practices, revealing years of medical misconduct. The entire hospital administration was being overhauled, with patient care returning as the priority. In the pediatric ICU, Sophia opened her eyes just as dawn broke over the city. Angela, exhausted but overjoyed, watched as Linda's brother examined her daughter. "The surgery can happen today," he announced. "And with Rachel's foundation covering the costs, we can provide the most advanced treatment available." As news of these developments spread through TechVision, something extraordinary happened. Employees began sharing their own stories of Rachel's quiet acts of kindness over the years: college funds established for janitors' children, anonymous medical bill payments, small businesses funded for employees' families. The woman everyone thought they'd lost had never really left them. She'd been planning, preparing, protecting right until the end. Sarah, who had been silent for days, suddenly tugged at Malik's sleeve. In her hand was a drawing not of a black butterfly, but of a colorful one emerging from a chrysalis. "Mommy's still helping," she said clearly, looking into her father's eyes with new understanding. Malik looked at his daughter, then at the rising sun painting the hospital walls with gold. Rachel's final gift wasn't just the foundation or the evidence that brought down Richards. It was the reminder that true leadership meant preparing for the worst while believing in the best in people. The universe, it seemed, had a poetry all its own. 1 year later, TechVision's headquarters buzzed with anticipation. The annual Christmas gathering, once a formal corporate affair, had transformed into something far more meaningful. The lobby, typically austere, was filled with the sound of children's laughter and the warm glow of holiday lights. Sophia, healthy and vibrant after her successful surgery, led a choir of employees' children in Christmas carols. Her voice, strong and clear, brought tears to Angela's eyes as she watched from the front row. Angela herself had been promoted to CFO 6 months ago, her integrity and dedication finally recognized and rewarded. Henry, now in full remission, stood nearby with his younger brother, who had successfully completed rehabilitation and now ran TechVision's new employee wellness program. The training initiative Henry had dreamed up during his darkest days had become a flagship program, helping dozens of older employees adapt to new technologies while maintaining their dignity in jobs. Linda, having served a brief sentence and completed extensive counseling, worked part-time at the Rachel Johnson Foundation, helping coordinate medical care for employees' families. Her brother's surgical expertise had saved not just Sophia, but 3 other employees' children in the past year. The foundation, revealed after Richard's arrest, had grown to help hundreds of families. Pastor Michael moved through the crowd, sharing quiet words of encouragement and wisdom. The company chaplaincy program he'd inspired had become a model for corporate spiritual support, offering comfort to employees of all faiths during difficult times. Sarah, now 9, had blossomed in unexpected ways. Her sensitivity, once seen as a limitation, had become a gift. She helped other children understand their parents' work struggles, drawing butterflies for anyone facing challenges. Her art therapy program for employees' children with special needs had become a sanctuary of understanding and acceptance. Malik watched it all from the same reception desk where his journey had begun. He still spent 1 day each month working there, keeping his perspective grounded and his ears open to the real pulse of the company. The practice had sparked a new corporate policy. Every executive now spent time in entry-level positions, learning the challenges and dreams of those they led. The company's transformation went far beyond policies and programs. TechVision had emerged from its crisis with a new soul, one that honored Rachel's vision of corporate responsibility and human dignity. The stock price had recovered, but more importantly, employee satisfaction had soared. The toxic culture had been replaced by something revolutionary: genuine community. Mr. Johnson, a small voice interrupted his thoughts. A young janitor's daughter stood before him, clutching a handmade card. "Thank you for helping my daddy learn computers. He's not scared of losing his job anymore." Before Malik could respond, the main lights dimmed. Sophia stepped forward, her surgical scar barely visible above her choir robe. "This song is for Mrs. Rachel," she announced, "and for everyone who helps us fly when our wings are broken." The children's choir began singing Amazing Grace, but with new verses written by the employees, celebrating second chances and unexpected healing. Sarah joined them, no longer afraid of crowds, her voice joining Sophia's in perfect harmony. Linda stood at the back, tears streaming down her face as she watched the children sing. Thomas's photo hung on the wall of remembrance nearby, alongside Rachel's, but now their stories inspired healing rather than hatred. The scholarship program established in their names had already sent 10 employees' children to college. As the song ended, Pastor Michael stepped forward. "A year ago, we faced our darkest hour," he began. "But sometimes God's greatest gifts come wrapped in our deepest wounds. Tonight we celebrate not just survival, but resurrection." Angela presented the year-end report's record profits, yes, but more importantly, unprecedented community impact. The Rachel Johnson Foundation had expanded nationwide, offering hope to thousands. Tech Vision's ethical business practices had set new industry standards, proving that compassion and success could coexist. Henry's technology training program had been adopted by companies across the country, creating a movement for inclusive technological advancement. His cancer support group for employees met weekly in the same boardroom where corporate battles had once raged. The evening concluded with a tradition Rachel had started years ago, each employee sharing one wish for the coming year. But now these wishes extended beyond personal gains to dreams of helping others, inspired by the changes they'd witnessed. As the gathering dispersed into the snowy night, Malik walked with Sarah to their car. She stopped, pointing to the city lights reflecting off freshly fallen snow. "Look, Daddy," she said, "the whole world is full of butterflies now." In his office later that night, Malik added the final touches to his memoir, The View from Below: A CEO's Journey to Rediscovery. The dedication reads simply, "For Rachel, who taught us that true success is measured in lives touched, not profits made, and for Sarah, who shows us daily that the most beautiful transformations often come from the deepest pain." The book would debut at one, not for its business insights, but for its message of corporate humanity. Its proceeds would fund similar foundations at other companies, spreading Rachel's vision far beyond Tech Vision's walls. As snow continued to fall outside his window, Malik smiled at the framed butterfly drawing on his wall, Sarah's first colorful one after months of black ones. Below it hung his reception desk nameplate, a daily reminder that true leadership means seeing from every level. Tech Vision had not just survived, it had become living proof that a company's greatest assets are the hearts of its people. The legacy of pain and betrayal had transformed into a testament to the power of forgiveness, determination, and love. In the end, the greatest victory wasn't in the restored stock price or corporate accolades. It was in the laughter of children like Sophia, the dignity of workers like Henry, the redemption of souls like Linda's, and the blossoming of spirits like Sarah's. Tech Vision had become more than a company, it had become a family, bound together by shared pain, shared healing, and shared hope. The city skyline that had once felt hollow now glowed with promise, each light representing a life touched by the transformation of a company that chose to put humanity first. And somewhere Malik knew Rachel was smiling. Dear fellow souls carrying hidden pain, when darkness feels overwhelming and your tears fall in silence, remember this story of healing and hope. Like Malik, you may stand at the pinnacle of success yet feel utterly alone. Like Angela, you might be fighting desperate battles for your child while wearing a brave face to the world. Like Henry, you could be battling illness while still being everyone else's guardian angel. Or like Linda, your grief might have twisted into something dark, poisoning your heart. But remember, every broken piece of your heart can become a window through which light shines. Rachel's death wasn't just an ending, it was a seed of transformation planted in soil of tears. Through Sarah's innocent drawings, through Sophia's survival, through Henry's selfless service despite his pain, Through Linda's redemption, we learn that our deepest wounds can become our greatest gifts to others. When you feel invisible, remember how Malik discovered truth by becoming unseen. When you feel powerless, remember how Angela's love for her daughter moved mountains. When illness steals your strength, remember how Henry's compassion became his medicine. When grief threatens to consume you, remember how Linda found healing by helping others heal. Your pain is not meaningless. Your struggles are not in vain. Like a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis, transformation requires darkness before the light. Your broken pieces can become stepping stones for others. Your tears can water gardens of hope you haven't yet imagined. Remember Sarah's final drawing, the colorful butterfly emerging from darkness. You too are emerging even when you can't feel your wings. Your story isn't over. Your pain can become purpose. Your wounds can become wisdom. In your darkest hour, remember sometimes God strips everything away so we can see what truly matters. And often our deepest healing comes from helping others heal. You are not alone in your pain. Like the interconnected lives at Tech Vision, we are all bound together in this beautiful broken tapestry of humanity. Your survival is someone else's hope. Your healing is someone else's miracle. So keep going, Braveheart. Let your tears water your transformation. Let your pain birth your purpose. And remember, like Rachel's love continuing to heal lives long after she was gone, the light you carry, even in your brokenness, might be the very light someone else needs to find their way home. The darkest night becomes the brightest dawn, and sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest gifts to the world. You are not broken. You are breaking through. With love and hope for every heart in healing. Look for the butterflies. They're everywhere, reminding us that transformation is always possible, even in the darkest cocoon.